Today, we're diving into something that might explain one of sport's biggest mysteries. Why do some incredibly talented athletes flame out while others, with similar or even less talent, sustain decades long careers? Why do some thrive under pressure while others crumble? The answer isn't in their muscles or their training programs, it's in something researchers call their motivational profile. And the science behind this is both fascinating and immediately useful, whether you're an athlete, coach, parent, or honestly, anyone trying to sustain high performance without burning out. Let me start with a story that illustrates what we're talking about. Picture two elite swimmers, both Olympic caliber, both training in the same program. One wakes up excited about practice, genuinely curious about how much she can improve her stroke efficiency today. The other wakes up anxious, checking Instagram to see what times her rivals posted, worried about disappointing her coach, desperate to prove she deserves her sponsorship. Fast forward 3 years. The first swimmer is still competing at the highest level, having fun, setting personal bests. The second, retired at 22, burnt out, says she never wants to see a pool again. What separated them wasn't talent or training, it was their motivational profile, the mix of psychological fuels that drove them. And here's what's wild: researchers can now predict with frightening accuracy which athletes will burn out based on these profiles. They've identified specific patterns that either protect against burnout or virtually guarantee it. But before you panic about your own motivation, here's the good news. These profiles aren't fixed. They can be shaped, shifted, and optimized. So, what exactly is a motivational profile? Think of it as your psychological fingerprint for why and how you pursue goals. It's not just about how motivated you are, that's like measuring only the amount of fuel in the tank. A motivational profile looks at the quality and mix of fuels. Are you running on premium unleaded or dirty diesel? Are you powered by curiosity and growth or by fear and obligation? And crucially, how does that fuel mix change under pressure, over time, and across different situations? The research identifies several key dimensions that shape these profiles. First, there's the autonomy spectrum. On one end, you have autonomous motivation. This is when you do something because you genuinely choose it, it aligns with your values, you feel ownership over it. Think of the athlete who trains because they love the process of getting better. On the other end is controlled motivation, doing something to avoid guilt, to please others, to chase approval. This is the athlete who trains because they're terrified of letting people down. Here's where it gets interesting. Both types can produce short term performance. The athlete driven by fear of disappointment might train just as hard as the one driven by love of the sport. But, and this is crucial, they have vastly different trajectories over time. The research is unequivocal. Athletes with predominantly controlled motivation are significantly more likely to burn out, and when they do, it's more severe. Let me break down what the research actually found because the numbers are striking. Athletes with what researchers call a motivated or controlled profiles, those driven primarily by external pressures, show burnout rates nearly 3 times higher than those with autonomous profiles. They report more physical exhaustion, more emotional depletion, and most tellingly, something called sport devaluation. They literally stop caring about the thing they once loved. But here's the nuance that often gets missed. It's not that external motivation is inherently bad. Elite athletes aren't monks who've transcended all worldly desires. They want to win medals, earn contracts, gain recognition. The difference is in how these external motivators interact with internal ones. The healthiest profiles show high autonomous motivation as the foundation, with external rewards serving as information or bonuses, not as the core fuel. Think of it like a house. Autonomous motivation, genuine interest, personal growth, alignment with values, that's your foundation and frame. External motivators, prizes, recognition, avoiding criticism, those are the decorations. You can have beautiful decorations, but if they're holding up the house, you're in trouble. The research identifies several distinct profiles that show up repeatedly across different sports and cultures. Let me walk you through them, and I bet you'll recognize yourself or people you know in these patterns. First, there's what I call the crafts person. These athletes show high mastery orientation. They're obsessed with getting better at their craft. They have strong autonomous motivation and moderate concern for outcomes. They're the ones staying after practice to perfect a technique, not because coach told them to, but because they're genuinely curious if they can do it better. The research shows these athletes have the lowest burnout risk and often the longest, most successful careers. Then there's the prover, high ego orientation, strong controlled motivation, constantly comparing themselves to others. They're talented and can achieve impressive short term results, but they're running on anxiety fuel. Every success just raises the bar for what they need to prove next time. The research shows these athletes might reach high peaks, but they're at severe risk for burnout, especially when they hit inevitable setbacks. The fire starter has incredibly high intrinsic motivation. They genuinely love what they do, but sometimes lacks the structure and discipline to channel it effectively. They might be inconsistent, brilliant one day and distracted the next. Interestingly, these athletes often need just a bit more external structure to thrive, but too much control kills their spark. The ghost is perhaps the saddest profile, high a motivation, going through the motions. They might have started with passion, but somewhere along the way, the joy got coached, criticized, or competed out of them. They're physically present, but psychologically checked out. The research shows these athletes are not just at risk for burnout, they're often already experiencing it. Now, what shapes these profiles? This is where the research gets really practical because it identifies specific factors we can actually influence. Coach behavior emerges as absolutely crucial. The research distinguishes between autonomy supportive coaching and controlling coaching, and the differences in athlete outcomes are stark. Autonomy supportive coaches provide rationale for training decisions, offer choices where possible, acknowledge athletes' perspectives. Their athletes show more adaptive motivational profiles and lower burnout rates. Controlling coaches use guilt, withdrawal of attention as punishment, excessive rewards, and punishments. Their athletes might perform in the short term. Fear is a powerful motivator, but they show higher burnout, more anxiety, and interestingly, more performance anxiety that actually impairs their competition results. One study followed over 700 elite athletes over a season, measuring their motivational profiles and tracking their coaches' behaviors. Athletes with controlling coaches were 2.7 times more likely to shift toward a motivated or controlled profiles over the season. Those with autonomy supportive coaches actually showed improvements in their motivational profiles. They became more intrinsically motivated over time. But here's the thing, most coaches aren't purely one or the other. They might be autonomy supportive in practice, but controlling in competition. They might support autonomy for their star athletes, but be controlling with others. The research shows that consistency matters. Mixed messages create confused motivational profiles. The motivational climate, the psychological atmosphere created by coaches, parents, and peers, also plays a huge role. The research distinguishes between task involving or mastery climates versus ego involving or performance climates. In a task involving climate, effort is valued, personal improvement is celebrated, mistakes are seen as learning opportunities. Athletes are compared to their own previous performances, not constantly to others. The research shows these climates foster autonomous motivation and protect against burnout. In ego involving climates, winning is everything, mistakes are punished, only the best performers get attention. Athletes are constantly ranked and compared. These climates breed controlled motivation, anxiety, and significantly higher burnout rates. Here's a finding that surprised even researchers. The climate effect is so strong that it can override individual personality factors. Put a naturally mastery oriented athlete in a toxic, ego involving environment for long enough, and their motivational profile will shift. Conversely, even naturally competitive, ego oriented athletes develop healthier profiles in supportive, mastery focused environments. The research on burnout prediction is where this gets almost eerily accurate. By measuring an athlete's motivational profile, researchers can predict with about 80% accuracy who will experience burnout within the next year. The key predictors: high motivation is the biggest red flag, when athletes report not knowing why they're doing this anymore. High controlled motivation combined with low autonomous motivation is another danger zone. And interestingly, perfectionism combined with ego orientation creates a particularly combustible mix. But burnout isn't just about feeling tired or stressed. The research identifies three core components: emotional and physical exhaustion, reduced sense of accomplishment, and sport devaluation. What's fascinating is how different motivational profiles lead to different burnout patterns. Athletes with controlled motivation tend to experience all three components. They're exhausted, feel like failures, and lose love for their sport. Athletes with initially high autonomous motivation who burn out tend to primarily experience exhaustion, but maintain some sense of accomplishment and don't completely devalue their sport. This matters for recovery. The second group often returns to sport successfully after addressing the exhaustion, while the first group often leaves permanently. The research also reveals something crucial about goal completion and achievement. You might assume that the most ego driven, outcome obsessed athletes would achieve the most. After all, they want it more, right? Wrong. The research consistently shows that athletes with mastery oriented, autonomous profiles actually achieve more of their goals, both short and long term. Why? Several reasons. First, they set better goals, more process focused, more within their control. Second, they persist through setbacks better because their self worth isn't destroyed by every failure. Third, they maintain consistent effort because they're not riding the emotional roller coaster of external validation. Fourth, they actually enjoy the process, which means they can sustain effort longer without depleting their psychological resources. One study tracked elite athletes' goal achievement over an Olympic cycle. Athletes with autonomous motivational profiles achieved 73% of their process goals and 61% of their outcome goals. Athletes with controlled profiles, they achieved only 45% of their process goals and 38% of their outcome goals. They were so focused on outcomes that they neglected the processes that create those outcomes. Now, let's talk about what this means practically. If you're an athlete, coach, or parent, how do you apply this research? First, audit your current motivational profile. Ask yourself, why do I do this? Not the surface answer. Dig deeper. If you stripped away all external rewards and recognition, would you still want to do it? When you have a great performance, is your first thought about how you improved or about how you compared to others? When you have a bad performance, do you feel like a failure as a person or just someone who had a bad day? If you're identifying concerning patterns, high control, low autonomy, creeping a motivation, don't panic. These profiles can be shifted. The research shows several effective interventions. Values clarification is powerful. Write down why this activity matters to you personally, beyond any external rewards. Keep this visible. Athletes who regularly remind themselves of their personal reasons for participation show improvements in autonomous motivation. Process goal emphasis can shift focus from ego to mastery. Set daily and weekly goals around skill development, effort, or strategy execution. Celebrate these regardless of outcomes. The research shows this gradually shifts motivational profiles toward healthier patterns. Choice and voice matter more than most people realize. Even small choices, which drill to do first, what music to play during training, enhance autonomy. Athletes who have input into their training programs show better motivational profiles than those who just follow orders. Recovery and identity diversification are crucial, but often overlooked. Athletes whose entire identity is wrapped up in sport show more fragile motivational profiles. Maintaining interests, relationships, and roles outside sport provides psychological safety that actually enhances sport motivation. It's counterintuitive. Caring less about sport as your only thing makes you care more about sport in a healthier way. For coaches, the implications are profound. Your behavior doesn't just affect performance, it shapes athletes' entire relationship with their sport. Every interaction is either fostering autonomous motivation or undermining it. Provide rationale, not just commands. We're doing this drill because it develops the specific endurance you'll need in the fourth quarter, fosters autonomy. Do it because I said so, undermines it. Acknowledge athletes' perspectives, especially negative emotions. I know this is frustrating, validates their experience. Stop complaining teaches them to suppress and internalize pressure. Offer choices where possible. This doesn't mean athletes run practice, but small choices foster ownership. Would you prefer to work on starts or turns first? Gives autonomy while maintaining structure. Focus feedback on process and effort, not just outcomes. Your preparation was excellent, reinforces controllable factors. Great job winning, reinforces outcome dependence. Create a mastery climate by celebrating personal improvements, using mistakes as teaching moments, and avoiding constant comparisons between athletes. The research shows this doesn't reduce competitiveness. It actually enhances performance by reducing anxiety and increasing intrinsic motivation. For parents, your role is trickier but crucial. Parents who show conditional love based on performance, more affection after wins, withdrawal after losses, create controlled motivation profiles in their children. Parents who separate their love from performance outcomes foster healthier profiles. Ask about effort and enjoyment, not just results. Did you work hard? Did you have fun? Sends different messages than did you win? Model healthy motivation yourself. If you're constantly comparing yourself to others, seeking external validation, or showing conditional self worth based on achievements, your children will absorb these patterns. Support autonomy by letting young athletes have age appropriate input into their sport participation. Forcing a child to continue a sport they've lost passion for doesn't build character, it builds resentment and controlled motivation patterns that can persist into adulthood. The research on profile transitions is particularly interesting. Athletes don't maintain the same motivational profile throughout their careers. Early career athletes often start with high intrinsic motivation. They just love playing. As stakes increase, external pressures mount, and controlled motivation can creep in. Mid career athletes face a crucial junction. Some successfully integrate external pressures while maintaining autonomous foundation. Others get consumed by external pressures, shifting toward controlled profiles. This is often when burnout risk peaks. Late career athletes often show interesting patterns. Some rediscover intrinsic motivation as external pressures decrease. They're no longer proving themselves, just enjoying the craft. Others, especially those with strongly controlled profiles, often struggle with retirement because their entire motivational structure was built on external validation that disappears. The research on culture and context adds another layer. Different sports have different motivational cultures. Individual sports often emphasize personal improvement and mastery, potentially fostering healthier profiles. Team sports can provide social support that buffers against burnout, but can also create peer pressure that feeds controlled motivation. Combat sports and aesthetic sports, gymnastics, figure skating, often show higher rates of controlled motivation, possibly due to judging systems and weight pressures. Endurance sports often attract and foster mastery orientation. You can't fake a marathon time, but these are tendencies, not destinies. The research shows that any sport can foster healthy or unhealthy motivational profiles, depending on how it's coached and structured. Gender differences in motivational profiles are subtle but important. Female athletes more often report motivation connected to social relationships and personal growth. Male athletes more often report competition and status focused motivation, but these are averages with huge individual variation, and they're heavily influenced by cultural expectations and coaching approaches. What's consistent across genders is that autonomous motivation predicts better outcomes, performance, well being, and longevity, regardless of whether you're male or female. The perfectionism connection deserves special attention because it's so common in elite sports. The research distinguishes between perfectionistic strivings, high personal standards, and perfectionistic concerns, fear of mistakes, concern about others' evaluations. Perfectionistic strivings alone aren't problematic and can even be adaptive when paired with autonomous motivation. But perfectionistic concerns combined with controlled motivation create a toxic cocktail. These athletes are never good enough, every mistake is catastrophic, and burnout is almost inevitable. The intervention research shows that addressing perfectionism directly is less effective than shifting the underlying motivational profile. As athletes develop more autonomous motivation, unhealthy perfectionism often naturally decreases. Let's talk about red flags, warning signs that a motivational profile is becoming problematic. Increasing anxiety before practice, not just competition, suggests shifting toward controlled motivation. Loss of enjoyment in previously pleasurable aspects of training indicates creeping a motivation. Constant social comparison and validation seeking on social media often reflects ego orientation overtaking mastery focus. Physical symptoms matter too. Chronic fatigue that doesn't improve with rest, recurring injuries, illness susceptibility, these can indicate that controlled motivation is driving an athlete beyond sustainable limits. The body keeps score of psychological pressure. Behavioral changes are telling. Skipping practice when no one's watching suggests external motivation without internal drive. Extreme emotional swings based on performance, euphoria after wins, depression after losses, indicates fragile, externally dependent motivation. The research on resilience and motivational profiles is particularly powerful. Athletes with autonomous profiles don't just perform better, they bounce back better. When injury strikes, they maintain motivation through the rehabilitation process because their identity isn't solely tied to competitive success. They find ways to grow and improve even when sidelined. Athletes with controlled profiles often struggle tremendously with injury. Without external validation from competition, their entire motivational structure collapses. They either rush back too soon, driven by fear of being forgotten, or lose motivation entirely. The COVID pandemic provided an unfortunate natural experiment in this. When competitions were canceled, athletes with autonomous profiles often reported discovering new joy in training without pressure. Athletes with controlled profiles frequently reported depression, anxiety, and loss of purpose. Same situation, completely different experiences based on motivational profiles. So, how do you actually shift a problematic profile? The research shows it's possible, but requires intentional, sustained effort. It's not about positive thinking or motivational speeches. It's about systematically changing the psychological environment and reward structures. Start with awareness. Many athletes have never actually examined why they do what they do. They've been on autopilot, following programs, chasing goals others set. Simply becoming conscious of motivational patterns is the first step toward changing them. Then experiment with process focus. Pick one week where outcomes don't matter. Focus entirely on executing processes, improving technique, enjoying movement. Notice how this feels different. Many athletes report this as revelatory. They remember why they started. Build autonomy gradually. If you've been entirely coach dependent, start making small decisions. Choose your warm up music. Decide the order of your supplementary exercises. Provide input on training plans. Agency builds slowly but surely. Diversify your identity. Develop interests outside sport. Maintain relationships not connected to athletics. Have goals beyond sport. This isn't lack of commitment. It's psychological insurance that actually enhances sport commitment by reducing desperation. Practice self-compassion. Athletes with controlled motivation are often brutally self-critical. Learning to treat yourself with the kindness you'd show a good friend shifts motivational patterns. This isn't lowering standards, it's creating psychological safety that actually enables higher performance. Address the fear beneath controlled motivation. Often, external validation seeking stems from deeper fears of worthlessness or abandonment. These might require professional support to address, but recognizing them reduces their unconscious power. The long term implications of motivational profiles extend beyond sport. Athletes who develop autonomous motivation in sport often transfer these patterns to careers, relationships, and other life domains. They've learned to pursue excellence for internal reasons, to find joy in process, to maintain effort through setbacks. Athletes with controlled motivation often struggle with life transitions. Without external structures telling them what to do, without constant validation, they feel lost. Many report that retirement forced them to finally examine their motivations, work they wish they'd done earlier. The research on coaches who successfully shift team motivational climates is instructive. It's not about overnight transformation. They make consistent, small changes. They celebrate effort publicly. They discuss mistakes as learning. They share their own struggles and growth. Gradually, the climate shifts, and with it, individual profiles. One coach in the research transformed a program known for burnout into one known for longevity. His approach? He started every practice by asking athletes what they wanted to work on. He ended practice by having athletes identify what they improved, not what they won. He banned ranking lists on the wall. Within 2 years, burnout rates dropped by 60%, and paradoxically, performance improved. The paradox throughout this research is that caring less about outcomes in a certain way, releasing desperate attachment while maintaining commitment to process, actually produces better outcomes. It's not about not caring, it's about caring differently, more sustainably, more healthily. Looking at the research holistically, several themes emerge. First, the quality of motivation matters more than quantity. A moderately motivated athlete with autonomous drive will outperform and outlast a highly motivated athlete driven by control and fear. Second, motivational profiles are more malleable than most people realize. They're not personality traits set in stone. They're patterns shaped by environment, coaching, and conscious choice. This is hopeful. It means change is possible at any stage. Third, the costs of unhealthy motivational profiles extend far beyond sport performance. They affect mental health, relationships, life satisfaction, and future development. Getting this right isn't just about winning more, it's about well being across the lifespan. Fourth, creating environments that foster healthy motivation isn't soft or anti competitive. The research consistently shows that athletes in autonomy supportive, mastery oriented environments perform better, last longer, and achieve more. Being psychologically healthy and being competitive aren't opposed, they're synergistic. Finally, this isn't just about elite athletes. These patterns apply to anyone pursuing challenging goals: students, professionals, artists. Understanding motivational profiles helps explain why some people sustain excellence while others burn out, why some thrive under pressure while others crumble. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with this thought. Your motivational profile isn't just about sport or performance. It's about your relationship with challenge, growth, and yourself. The patterns you develop in pursuing one goal tend to replicate across life domains. If you're running on fear, external validation, and comparison, that exhaustion will spread beyond sport. If you're powered by curiosity, growth, and personal values, that energy sustains across challenges. The research shows we have more control over these patterns than we might think. The athletes who have the longest, most successful, most satisfying careers aren't necessarily the most talented or even the hardest working in a traditional sense. They're the ones who've figured out how to fuel their pursuit sustainably, who've built motivational profiles that can weather setbacks, evolve through life stages, and ultimately help them thrive not just as athletes but as humans. Whether you're an athlete, coach, parent, or someone interested in sustainable excellence, the message from this research is clear. Examine your motivational fuel. Is it sustainable? Is it healthy? Is it truly yours? And if not, know that change is possible. The research doesn't just diagnose the problem, it lights the path toward healthier, more sustainable ways of pursuing excellence. The choice between burning bright and burning out isn't about talent or toughness, it's about the psychological fuel you're running on. Choose wisely because the research shows that choice shapes not just your performance, but your entire experience of challenge, growth, and ultimately life itself. As we close today's deep dive into motivational profiles on Strides to Solutions, I want to leave you with something practical you can use immediately, whether you're heading to the barn, the gym, or honestly, any area of your life where you're pursuing excellence. The research we've explored today fundamentally reframes how we think about motivation. It's not about how much fire you have, it's about what kind of fire burns within you. Is it the sustainable warmth of autonomous motivation, fueled by personal growth and genuine interest? Or is it the anxious flame of controlled motivation, consuming you from the inside out? Here's your homework, and it's deceptively simple. Over the next week, catch yourself in moments of effort, whether that's during a challenging ride, a workout, or even a difficult work project. Ask yourself, why am I doing this right now? Not the surface answer, but dig deeper. Are you trying to prove something, avoid disappointment, or are you genuinely curious about what you might discover or improve? Notice without judgment. If you find yourself constantly in that controlled, fear based space, that's not a character flaw, it's valuable information. Remember, these profiles aren't fixed. They're patterns that can be shifted with awareness and intentional practice. For those of you working with horses, this research offers a unique insight. Horses are masters at reading our internal state. When we approach them with controlled motivation, tense, anxious, desperately needing them to perform, they feel it. When we approach with autonomous motivation, curious, present, focused on the process, they feel that too. Our motivational profile doesn't just affect us, it ripples out to our equine partners. The paradox we keep returning to is worth sitting with. Releasing desperate attachment to outcomes while maintaining commitment to excellence actually produces better outcomes. This isn't about lowering standards or not caring. It's about caring in a way that sustains rather than depletes you. If you recognize yourself in one of the more concerning profiles, the proverb desperately seeking validation, the ghost going through the motions, please know that awareness is the first step toward change. You're not broken. You've just developed patterns that served you at one point, but may not be serving you now. With intentional effort and often support from others, these patterns can shift. For coaches and parents listening, remember every interaction is either fostering autonomous motivation or undermining it. Your influence extends far beyond performance metrics. You're shaping how someone will relate to challenge and growth for potentially the rest of their lives. That's both a profound responsibility and an incredible opportunity. The research shows us that sustainable excellence, the kind that lasts decades, that survives setbacks, that actually feels good, comes from aligning our efforts with our values, finding joy in the process, and maintaining perspective beyond any single outcome. Whether you're an Olympic hopeful or someone who just loves your sport, these principles apply. As you move forward, remember that examining and potentially shifting your motivational profile isn't just about performing better, it's about experiencing your pursuits, whether athletic, professional, or personal, in a fundamentally different way. It's the difference between feeling like you're constantly running from something and feeling like you're moving towards something meaningful. Thank you for joining me today on Strides to Solutions. Until next time, pay attention to your psychological fuel gauge, not just how full it is, but what's filling it. Because in the long run, that quality matters far more than the quantity. This is Esther Adams, reminding you that the path to sustainable excellence isn't paved with fear and comparison. It's built on curiosity, growth, and a deep connection to why you started in the first place. Keep writing, keep growing, and most importantly, keep paying attention to what truly drives you forward.